The stars had never looked so cold. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of Earth's orbital defense station, watching the enemy fleet approach. 50,000 alien ships moved through space like a swarm of angry insects. Each ship was bigger than anything humanity had ever built. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a city. "How long until they reach Earth?" Chen asked. 12 hours, Admiral," her communications officer replied. His voice shook slightly. "Maybe less if they speed up." Chen nodded. She had expected this day for years, but it still felt like a punch to the gut. The Hegemony Council had finally decided humanity was too much trouble to ignore. For 300 years, humans had spread across the galaxy. They built colonies on dead worlds and made them green. They mined asteroids and turned empty space into bustling trade routes. They were loud, messy, and refused to follow anyone else's rules. The hegemony didn't like that. 12 alien species controlled most of the galaxy. They called themselves the Hegemony Council, and they had been in charge for thousands of years. Their technology was advanced. Their fleets were massive. Their laws were absolute, or so they thought. "Admiral Zexathara is requesting a communication channel," the officer said. Chen straightened her uniform. "Put her through." The main screen flickered, and an alien face appeared. Admiral Zexathara looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird. Her scales were dark blue and her eyes were the color of old gold. She had led hegemony fleets for over a century. Entire worlds surrendered just hearing her name. "Human Admiral," Zexathara said. Her voice was smooth but cold. "I am here to deliver the final judgment of the Hegemony Council." "I'm listening," Chen replied. "Your species has violated 17 major galactic laws. You have colonized restricted systems. You have interfered with hegemony trade routes. You have refused to submit to proper authority." Zexathara's eyes narrowed. "The Council has decided that humanity must be corrected." Chen felt her jaw tighten. "And what does that mean, exactly?" "Complete surrender. Your military forces will be disbanded. Your colonies will be placed under hegemony control. Your homeworld will accept a permanent occupation force." Zexathara smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "In return, we will allow your species to continue existing." "That's generous of you," Chen said dryly. "You have 6 hours to respond. If you refuse, we will take what we want by force." The alien admiral leaned forward. "I should mention that resistance is pointless. My fleet could destroy your entire solar system without breaking formation." The screen went dark. Chen stood, in silence for a moment. Around her, the bridge crew waited. Some looked scared. Others looked angry. All of them looked to her for answers. "Get me a secure channel to Europa base," she said finally. "Admiral?" her communications officer asked. "Europa base has been dark for 20 years. "Not anymore," Chen replied. "Use authorization code Prometheus 77 Alpha." The officer's eyes widened. Every military officer knew that code, even if they had never used it. It was the key to humanity's deepest, darkest secret. The screen flickered again. This time, it showed a man in his 50s with graying hair and tired eyes. Dr. Marcus Webb looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Sarah," Webb said. "I was wondering when you'd call." "Marcus, tell me it's ready." Webb rubbed his face. "Define ready." "It won't blow up the solar system, if that's what you're asking." "Probably. That's not exactly reassuring." "Sarah, you know what this thing is. You know what it can do." "Are you sure about this?" Chen looked out at the approaching fleet. 50,000 ships, enough firepower to crack planets, all coming to enslave or destroy her species. "They gave us 6 hours to surrender," she said. Webb nodded slowly. "Then we don't have much choice, do we? I'll begin the activation sequence." "How long?" 4 hours to full power, maybe less if we skip some safety checks." Skip them all. Sarah, skip them all, Marcus. If this doesn't work, safety checks won't matter anyway. Webb sighed. Understood. Prometheus is coming online. The screen went dark again. Chen turned to face her crew. All ships, prepare for evacuation protocols. I want every civilian transport ready to jump to the outer colonies. Military vessels will form a defensive line around Earth. Admiral, her tactical officer said. With respect, our entire fleet won't last 5 minutes against that force. They're not supposed to last 5 minutes, Chen replied. They just need to buy us time. Meanwhile, deep beneath the ice of Europa, something ancient began to wake up. The Prometheus facility had been built in absolute secrecy 40 years ago. Only a dozen people knew it existed. Even fewer understood what it really was. Dr. Webb walked through corridors that had been empty for 2 decades. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls. His footsteps echoed in the silence. He reached the main control room and began flipping switches. One by one, massive systems came online. Power readings climbed from 0 to numbers that should have been impossible. Computer status report, Webb said. Prometheus Unbound is at 15% power, a calm voice replied. All primary systems are functional. Reality distortion field is stable. Webb smiled grimly. Reality distortion field. They had spent 20 years trying to come up with a better name for it. They never did. The Prometheus Unbound wasn't just a ship. It was humanity's answer to a simple question. What if the laws of physics were more like suggestions? Other species had built bigger guns and stronger shields. Humans had decided to build something that could ignore the rules entirely. Begin emergent sequence, Webb commanded. Emergent sequence initiated. Estimated time to surface, 3 hours, 47 minutes. Deep in Europa's ice, the largest structure humanity had ever built began to move. The Prometheus Unbound was 2.5 kilometers long and shaped like nothing that should be able to fly. Its hull was made of materials that didn't technically exist and powered by reactions that broke several fundamental laws. As it rose through the ice, space itself seemed to bend around it. Back on Earth's defense station, alarms began sounding. Admiral, the sensor officer called out, I'm reading massive energy signatures from Europa. Whatever's down there, it's big. Chen smiled for the first time in hours. That, Lieutenant, is humanity's insurance policy. Ma'am, you'll see. All ships maintain defensive positions and send a message to Admiral Zexathera. What should it say? Chen's smile grew wider. Tell her she might want to reconsider her offer. The hegemony fleet continued its approach, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. Soon they would learn that humans were very good at breaking things, including the universe itself. Admiral Zexathera stood in the command center of her flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Around her, dozens of officers from different species worked at their stations. The bridge hummed with quiet efficiency that came from centuries of conquest. Report, she commanded. All fleet elements are in position, her tactical officer replied. He was a Krell, tall and thin with 4 arms and skin like polished metal. The human defense fleet has taken position around their homeworld. 47 ships total. Zexathera laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. 47 ships against 50,000. Either they're incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Perhaps both, Admiral, another officer suggested. Signal all ships. Begin the attack in 4 hours. I want this over quickly. Zexathera turned to her communications officer. Any response from the humans? Yes, Admiral. They said you might want to reconsider your offer. Zexathera's golden eyes narrowed. How amusing. They think they have something that can threaten us. She had good reason to be confident. Her fleet represented the combined military might of 12 advanced civilizations. Some of her ships were older than human civilization itself. Others carried weapons that could burn the atmosphere off a planet. Humanity had been spacefaring for only 3 centuries. They were children playing with toys, or so she thought. Deep beneath Europa's ice, the Prometheus Unbound finally broke free. Dr. Webb watched from the control room as his life's work emerged into open space. Even after 20 years of building, the ship still took his breath away. It looked wrong. That was the only way to describe it. The hull curved in directions that hurt to look at. Parts of the ship seemed to exist in different places at the same time. The engines glowed with a light that wasn't quite any color that should exist. "All systems green," the computer announced. "Reality distortion field at maximum stability. Captain Chen is requesting permission to board." "Permission granted," Webb replied. A small shuttle approached the Prometheus Unbound. As it got closer, the shuttle began to stretch and bend. Not physically, but in ways that made Webb's instruments scream warnings. The shuttle existed normally one moment, then seemed to be in 3 places at once the next. This was how the ship worked. It didn't move through space like normal vessels. It convinced space to move around it instead. Captain Sarah Chen had left her post on the defense station to take command of humanity's most powerful weapon. She had trained for this moment for 15 years, studying physics that most scientists said was impossible. As her shuttle docked with the Prometheus Unbound, she felt reality shift around her. The walls of the ship seemed to breathe. Gravity pointed in directions that didn't make sense. Walking down the corridors required her to think about where she wanted to go rather than just moving her feet. The bridge was the strangest part of all. It existed in normal space mostly, but the view screens showed things that shouldn't be possible. Stars appeared as spirals of color. Empty space writhed with patterns of light and shadow. "Welcome aboard, Captain," said Commander James Park, her second in command. He looked pale but determined. "All stations report ready." "Thank you, Commander. Navigation, plot a course for the Hegemony Fleet." Captain," the navigation officer said, "how exactly do we plot a course for this thing?" Chen smiled. "Think of where you want to go. The ship will handle the rest." Meanwhile, Zexathara was receiving her first reports about the strange readings from Europa. "Admiral," her science officer said, "I'm reading impossible energy signatures from the human moon. The readings don't match any known technology." "Explain." "Impossible," Zexathara demanded. The science officer, a member of the ethereal race known for their advanced understanding of physics, looked confused. "The energy signatures are negative in some dimensions, while being positive in others. The mass readings fluctuate between 0 and infinity. Either our instruments are completely broken, or the humans have built something that violates the fundamental laws of physics. Check the instruments." "I've checked them 17 times, Admiral. They're working perfectly." Zexathara frowned. The ethereals were never wrong about physics. If one of them said something was impossible, it usually was. "Show me," she commanded. The main screen displayed sensor readings from Europa. What Zexathara saw made no sense. The readings showed a massive object that seemed to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Its energy output was both enormous and negligible. Its mass was both crushing and weightless. "What am I looking at?" she asked. "Unknown, Admiral. But whatever it is, it's moving toward us." That was when the Prometheus Unbound appeared on their screens. Every officer on the bridge fell silent. The human ship looked like it had been designed by someone who hated the concept of 3-dimensional space. It was huge, but also seemed small. It was moving fast, but also appeared to be standing still. "How long until it reaches us?" Zexathara asked. "That's difficult to calculate, Admiral. According to our sensors, it's already here, but also still at Europa, and somehow also hasn't left dock yet." Zexathara felt something she hadn't experienced in decades. Uncertainty. "All ships. Battle stations, target that vessel." "Admiral," her tactical officer said, "targeting systems can't lock on. The computer can't decide where the ship actually is." On the Prometheus Unbound, Captain Chen watched the hegemony fleet prepare for battle. The enemy ships looked impressive on her screens, but she knew they were thinking in terms of normal space combat. This wouldn't be normal space combat. "Captain," her communications officer said, "the hegemony flagship is hailing us. Put them through." Zexathera's face appeared on the screen. She looked angry and confused in equal measure. "Human vessel," she said, "identify yourself and state your intentions." "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran vessel Prometheus Unbound. We're here to discuss your withdrawal from human space. You're in no position to make demands. My fleet outnumbers you 50,000 to 1. Chen leaned back in her captain's chair. Around her, space itself seemed to pulse with barely contained energy. "Admiral, you're thinking about this all wrong. You're not outnumbered 50,000 to 1. You're outnumbered 1 to 50,000. That makes no sense." "It will in a moment. This is your final warning. Withdraw from human space, or we will demonstrate why we built this ship." Zexathera laughed. "One ship against my entire fleet? You humans really are insane." "Maybe," Chen replied. "But we're also very good at solving problems. And right now, your fleet is our problem." She cut the communication. Around the Prometheus Unbound, space began to ripple like water. The laws of physics, which had remained constant for billions of years, suddenly became negotiable. The hegemony fleet was about to learn that humanity had weaponized the universe itself. "All stations," Chen announced, "prepare for combat. And remember, we're not just fighting ships. We're fighting the assumption that the universe has to make sense." The greatest space battle in galactic history was about to begin, and it would break everything. Admiral Zexathera had conquered 47 worlds in her career. She had seen weapons that could burn through the cores of planets. She had witnessed fleets destroy entire star systems. Nothing in the galaxy surprised her anymore. Until now. "Admiral," her science officer said, his voice tight with fear, "the space around the human vessel is behaving strangely. Gravity is fluctuating in patterns that shouldn't be possible. The speed of light appears to be changing in localized areas." "That's impossible," Zexathera replied, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. "Yes, Admiral, it should be impossible, but it's happening anyway." On her main screen, the human ship continued to defy everything she understood about reality. The Prometheus Unbound seemed to exist in several places at once, its image flickering between different positions like a bad hologram. "All ships," she commanded, "open fire! Target the human vessel!" 50,000 ships responded at once. The combined firepower could have shattered moons and boiled oceans. Plasma beams hot enough to melt steel lanced through space. Antimatter missiles that could crack continents streaked toward their target. Graviton bombs that bent space itself flew alongside weapons that had no names in any human language. It was enough destruction to end civilizations. All of it stopped, 3 kilometers from the Prometheus Unbound. The weapons didn't bounce off shields or get absorbed by armor. They simply stopped, hanging in space like insects trapped in amber. Plasma beams froze mid-flight. Missiles drifted motionless. Even the gravity bombs hung there, their reality-warping effects contained in bubbles of twisted space-time. "What just happened?" Zexathera demanded. "Unknown, Admiral. All weapons have ceased forward motion at exactly 3 kilometers from the target. They appear to be suspended in some kind of spatial distortion field." Zexathera stared at the screen. In 300 years of warfare, she had never seen anything like this. The humans hadn't destroyed the incoming weapons or deflected them. They had simply made the space around their ship refuse to let the weapons continue. On the Prometheus Unbound, Captain Chen watched the frozen attack with grim satisfaction. "Impressive," she said. "How many ships just fired at us?" "All of them." "Captain," her tactical officer replied, "approximately 3 million individual weapons. And they're all just stopped?" The reality distortion field is holding them in stasis. They exist in normal space, but time moves differently there. From their perspective, they're still traveling toward us at full speed. From our perspective, they're not moving at all. Chen nodded. She had studied the theory for years, but seeing it in practice was still amazing. The Prometheus Unbound didn't just bend the laws of physics. It convinced reality that the laws were more like guidelines. "Captain," her communications officer said, "Admiral Zexathera is hailing us again." "Put her through." The alien admiral's face appeared on screen. Her golden eyes were wide with something that might have been fear. "What have you done?" Zexathera demanded. "We stopped your attack," Chen replied calmly. "Your weapons are perfectly safe. They're just taking a very long time to reach us." "This is impossible. No species has technology that can manipulate space-time on this scale." "You're right. No species does. But humans aren't like other species. We don't accept that things are impossible. We just figure out how to make them possible anyway." Chen stood up from her captain's chair. Around her, the bridge hummed with power that made reality itself uncomfortable. "Admiral Zexathara, you came here to force humanity to submit. You brought 50,000 ships because you thought overwhelming force would make us surrender. But you made one critical mistake." "What? Mistake? You assumed we would fight fair." Chen cut the communication and turned to her weapons officer. "Target the center of their fleet formation. Prepare the Titan cannon." Every officer on the bridge went quiet. They had trained for this moment, but actually using the Titan cannon was something else entirely. "Captain," the weapons officer said carefully, "are you sure about this? Once we fire, there's no going back." "They had their chance to leave peacefully," Chen replied. "Fire the Titan cannon." Deep in the heart of the Prometheus Unbound, machinery that shouldn't exist began to power up. The Titan cannon wasn't a weapon in any traditional sense. It didn't fire energy beams or projectiles. Instead, it fired concentrated space-time itself. Reality screamed. The beam that emerged from the Prometheus Unbound was invisible to the naked eye, but every sensor in the fleet detected it. It wasn't made of matter or energy. It was made of the fundamental structure of the universe, compressed into a weapon that could rewrite the laws of physics wherever it touched. The beam passed through the center of the hegemony fleet, and everything changed. Ships didn't explode. They didn't burn or break apart. They simply stopped being ships in any meaningful sense. Some vessels found themselves scattered across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Their crews existed in normal space, while their hulls existed in hyperspace, and their engines existed in a dimension where time moved backward. Other ships discovered that the constants of physics no longer applied to them. The speed of light became the speed of sound. Gravity worked sideways. The strong nuclear force decided it didn't want to hold atoms together anymore. A few unlucky vessels found themselves experiencing time in reverse. For several terrifying seconds, their crews watched their own deaths happen backward before the ships winked out of existence entirely. In the space of a single moment, 15,000 hegemony ships ceased to exist in any conventional sense. They weren't destroyed. They were edited out of reality like mistakes in a cosmic manuscript. The surviving ships fled in panic, their crews screaming reports that made no sense. Some tried to jump to hyperspace, only to discover that the fundamental framework of faster-than-light travel had become unstable. Ships that attempted to jump found themselves emerging light years away from their intended destinations, or decades in the past, or in universes where the laws of physics were completely different. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Zexathara watched, in horror as her mighty fleet fell apart around her. "Damage report!" she shouted. "Admiral," her tactical officer said, his voice shaking, "we've lost 15,000 ships. Not destroyed, lost. They're just gone. Our sensors can't find any trace of them." "What about the rest of the fleet?" "Scattered across the system. Many ships are reporting that their faster-than-light drives are malfunctioning. Some are experiencing temporal displacement. Others are registering impossible physics readings. Zexathera sank into her command chair. In a single shot, the humans had done more damage to her fleet than entire wars had managed. But worse than the losses was the implication. If humanity could do this once, they could do it again. Admiral, her communications officer said quietly, the human ship is hailing us. Captain Chen's face appeared on the screen. She looked calm, as if she hadn't just rewritten the fundamental laws of reality. Admiral Zexathera, Chen said, I believe we were discussing your withdrawal from human space. What have you done? Zexathera whispered. We defended ourselves. Your fleet attacked us, so we responded appropriately. You've broken the laws of physics. No, Chen replied with a slight smile. We've just demonstrated that the laws of physics are more flexible than you thought. Now, are you ready to discuss terms, or would you like us to demonstrate our capabilities again? Zexathera looked at her remaining ships, scattered and broken across the solar system. Many were already fleeing toward the edge of the system. There, crews too terrified to follow orders. For the first time in her long career, Admiral Zexathera found herself in a battle she could not win. The humans had done the impossible. They had weaponized reality itself. The silence that followed the Titan cannon's firing was the most terrifying sound Admiral Zexathera had ever heard. Across her fleet, emergency beacons screamed warnings that made no sense. Ships reported that their navigation computers couldn't determine which direction was up. Others said their engines were working perfectly, but somehow moving them backward through time. A few vessels claimed they were receiving messages from themselves in alternate dimensions. Status report, Zexathera demanded, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. Her science officer, one of the most brilliant minds in the ethereal race, looked up from his instruments with eyes full of terror. Admiral, he said slowly, we have a problem, a very big problem. Explain. The human weapon didn't just destroy our ships. It damaged space-time itself. The area where our vessels were destroyed has become what I can only describe as a reality wound. The fundamental constants of physics are fluctuating randomly within a sphere roughly 1 light hour across. Zexathera felt cold despite the warmth of her bridge. What does that mean for our ships? Any vessel that enters that area experiences unpredictable changes to the laws of physics. Some ships have reported that the speed of light is now variable. Others say gravity is working in reverse. 3 vessels claim they've started receiving radio signals from the future. On the bridge of the Titan's Wrath, Captain Kextar of the Hegemony's 47th Battle Group was learning firsthand what unpredictable physics meant. Engineering, he shouted. Why are we moving backward? Unknown, sir, came the reply. Our engines are running at full forward thrust, but something is pulling us in reverse. Also, sir, the reactor is running at 150% efficiency, which should be impossible. And why is the artificial gravity pointing toward the ceiling? We're working on that, sir. Kextar gripped his command chair as his ship tumbled through space in directions that didn't exist 5 minutes ago. Through his viewports, he could see other vessels spinning helplessly as their crews tried to understand why left had become. Purple and forward had become yesterday. Sir, his communications officer called out, we're receiving a message from the human vessel. Put it through. Captain Chen's image appeared on the screen. She looked concerned, which was somehow more frightening than if she had looked angry. Captain Kextar, she said, we're reading massive instabilities in your ship's local space-time. We're prepared to offer assistance. Assistance? Kextar laughed bitterly. You did this to us. We defended ourselves against an unprovoked attack, Chen replied calmly. But we're not interested in watching your crews suffer because of your admiral's poor decisions. Would you like help stabilizing your ship's physics? Kextar wanted to refuse, but at that moment his ship's gravity shifted again, and several officers floated toward what used to be a wall. "What kind of help?" he asked. "We can emit a localized reality stabilization field. It will restore normal physics to your immediate area. But you'll need to move away from the disruption zone immediately." Afterward, Kextar looked around his bridge. Half his crew was stuck to the ceiling. His tactical officer was phasing in and out of existence. His navigation console was displaying star charts from 17 different galaxies. "Do it," he said. The Prometheus. Unbound moved closer, and suddenly everything returned to normal. Gravity pointed down. Time moved forward. The color blue stopped tasting like mathematics. "Thank you," Kextar said quietly. "You're welcome. Now get your ship out of here before the instabilities return." Meanwhile, the effects of the Titan cannon were spreading beyond the battle zone. On Hegemony Prime, the capital world of the galactic government, emergency sessions were being called at all hours. Reports flooded in from across the sector describing impossible phenomena. Chancellor Vexana, leader of the Hegemony Council, stood before a gathering of the galaxy's most powerful beings. Representatives from 12 species filled the great hall, but for the first time in centuries they looked afraid. "What are we dealing with?" she asked the chief science advisor. "Something unprecedented," the advisor replied. He was ancient, even by the standards of his long-lived species. "The humans have demonstrated the ability to weaponize the fundamental forces of reality. The implications are staggering." "Explain." "It in terms I can understand. Imagine if someone gave a child the ability to change the laws of mathematics. 2 plus 2 might equal 7 in their presence. Multiplication might work backward. The concept of number itself might cease to exist." "And that's what the humans can do to physics?" "Apparently, yes. Our physicists are calling it applied, exotic reality manipulation. The humans have learned to convince the universe that its own rules are optional." In the hall, murmurs of fear rippled through the assembled representatives. The Keth delegation, known for their military might, looked particularly shaken. "How do we fight an enemy that can change the rules of existence?" asked General Thexmore of the Keth. "We don't," the science advisor replied simply. "You cannot wage war against an opponent who can decide that your weapons don't work, your ships don't exist, and your fundamental understanding of reality is wrong." Chancellor Vexana felt the weight of leadership pressing down on her. The hegemony had ruled the galaxy for millennia because they had the most advanced technology and the largest fleets. But technology was useless against an enemy who could rewrite the laws that made technology possible. "What do they want?" she asked. "According to their communications, they want us to leave human space alone. They're not demanding tribute or territory. They're not trying to conquer us. They just want to be left in peace. And if we refuse?" The science advisor gestured to a holographic display showing the battle zone around Earth. Ships drifted helplessly through regions where physics had gone insane. Some vessels existed in multiple places at once. Others flickered between dimensions like dying lights. Then they will demonstrate their capabilities again. And next time, they might not limit themselves to military targets. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place on hundreds of worlds. Ancient artificial intelligences that had slept for eons awakened to analyze the threat. Civilizations that had fought wars for millions of years suddenly found themselves united in terror. On Earth, Captain Chen received reports from across human space about the effects of the Titan cannon. "Captain," her science officer said, "we're getting reports of physics instabilities as far away as the Centauri system. Faster-than-light travel is becoming unreliable throughout the sector." "How bad is it?" "Some ships are arriving at their destinations before they left. Others are emerging from hyperspace in parallel universes. The Merchant Guild has suspended all non-essential travel until the instabilities settle down." Chen rubbed her temples. She had known the Titan cannon would have side effects, but seeing them in practice was sobering. "Any word from the Hegemony fleet?" "Admiral Zexathara has withdrawn her remaining ships to the edge of the system. They're not trying to approach Earth, but they're not leaving either. I think they're afraid to use their faster-than-light drives. Smart. Of them. How long until the instabilities fade? Unknown, Captain. Dr. Webb estimates anywhere from 6 months to 6 years. We've never fired the weapon before, so we're learning as we go. Chen nodded. The Titan cannon had worked exactly as designed. It had stopped the hegemony fleet and demonstrated humanity's power, but it had also created a mess that would take years to clean up. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson. Humanity would not be conquered, enslaved, or destroyed. But they were also learning that humans were reasonable people who didn't want to rule the galaxy. They just wanted to be left alone to build impossible things and break the laws of physics in peace. The question now was whether the hegemony would be smart enough to accept that arrangement. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, the galaxy looked very different. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the Prometheus Unbound, watching repair crews work on a damaged hegemony vessel. The alien ship hung in space like a broken bird, its hull twisted into shapes that had taken 3 weeks to figure out how to fix. "Captain," Commander Park said, joining her at the viewport, "the Keth cruiser Eternal Vigilance is requesting permission to approach." "Granted. How are their repairs coming?" "Dr. Webb says another 2 days. Their ship got caught in a temporal loop when they tried to jump to hyperspace last week. Their crew experienced the same 5 minutes 847 times before we could stabilize." "Them," Chen nodded. It was the same story across the sector. The physics instabilities caused by the Titan cannon had made space travel a nightmare for everyone. Ships that tried to use faster-than-light drives found themselves scattered across time and space like cosmic dice thrown by a mad god. The irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity had built the ultimate weapon to defend themselves, and now they spent most of their time helping their former enemies deal with the consequences. "Captain," her communications officer called out, "incoming message from Earth. It's Admiral Webb." Dr. Marcus Webb had been promoted after the battle, though he insisted he was still more comfortable with a lab coat than with Admiral's stripes. His face appeared on the main screen, looking tired but satisfied. "Sarah," he said, "I've got news from the Hegemony Council meeting." "Good news or bad news?" "That depends on your perspective. They've officially dissolved the hegemony as a military alliance. Each species is going back to governing their own space." Chen raised an eyebrow. "That's certainly a change." "It gets better. Chancellor Vexana has personally requested a meeting with human representatives. They want to discuss trade agreements and mutual defense pacts." "Mutual defense? 6 months ago they were trying to conquer us." Webb smiled. "Funny how attitudes change when you realize the other side can rewrite reality. Also, 3 species have formally requested access to human physics research. They want to learn how to adapt their technology to the new reality." Through the viewport, Chen watched the Keth cruiser slowly approach. Its captain, Kex Tar, had been one of the first enemy officers to accept human help after his ship got caught in the reality disruption. Now he was helping coordinate rescue operations for other vessels. It was strange how war could turn into cooperation so quickly. "Any word on the other Titan-class vessels?" Chen asked, still sleeping peacefully in the ice, though Admiral Reeves thinks we should build more, just in case. Let's hope we never need them. The truth was, humanity didn't want to rule the galaxy. They had built the Titan-class ships because they refused to be ruled by anyone else. The weapons were powerful enough to break the universe, but their real strength was in never having to be used again. Word had spread quickly through the galactic community. Humanity had 12 more ships like the Prometheus Unbound hidden in the ice of Europa. Nobody wanted to test whether that was true. On Hegemony Prime, former Chancellor Vexana met with her species' new government. The title of Chancellor no longer existed. In its place, the Ethereals had created a Council of Equals, with representatives from all the major galactic civilizations. The human delegation has agreed to share their reality stabilization technology, she announced to the assembled representatives. In exchange, we're providing them with our star mapping data and trade route information. General Thexmore of the Keth leaned forward. Are we really going to trust them with our most sensitive information? General, Vexana replied, they could have destroyed our entire civilization with a single shot. Instead, they've spent the last 6 months helping us repair the damage from their own weapon. I think we can trust them with star charts. The Keth general grumbled, but didn't argue. Everyone in the room had seen the reports from the battle zone. The humans could have pressed their advantage, conquered worlds, demanded tribute. Instead, they had offered technical assistance and humanitarian aid. It was the most terrifying display of power any of them had ever witnessed. The power to destroy everything, combined with the wisdom not to use it. What about their expansion into our space? Asked Ambassador Kelthan of the Nexus Collective. They're not expanding into our space, Vexana replied. They're expanding into empty space that we claimed but never colonized. The difference is important. But the principle is that we tried to enforce our laws on a species that could rewrite the laws of physics. We lost. Badly. Vexana's voice carried the weight of bitter experience. The humans have made it clear they're willing to coexist peacefully with anyone who doesn't try to enslave them. I suggest we take them up on that offer. Meanwhile, in the Outer Rim territories, humanity continued its expansion into the stars, but now they did so as partners rather than invaders. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel New Horizons, watching a joint human-alien colony ship approach a pristine world. Half the colonists were human. The other half were refugees from species that had lost their homeworlds during the Hegemony Wars. Beautiful planet, said her first officer, a Keth named Hexton, who had joined her crew after the battle. Good atmosphere, rich soil, plenty of water. Room for everyone, Santos agreed. The humans will take the northern continent. The ethereals want the floating islands, and the Nexus Collective prefers the underwater cities anyway. It was working better than anyone had expected. Humans were good at making dead worlds livable. Other species had technologies that could make livable worlds. Paradise. Together, they were creating something new, a galactic community based on cooperation rather than conquest. Captain, the communications officer called out, we're receiving a priority message from Earth. Put it through. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen. She was back on Earth now, overseeing the integration of human and alien technologies. Maria, she said, I wanted to give you a heads up. We're getting reports of an unknown fleet approaching from the galactic core. Long-range sensors suggest they're not from any known species. Santos felt a chill. How big? Big enough to be a problem. We're bringing the Prometheus Unbound out of dock just in case. Do you think they're hostile? Unknown. But if they are, at least we know our big stick still works. Santos smiled grimly. The Prometheus Unbound had become famous throughout the galaxy, not just as a weapon, but as a symbol. It represented humanity's willingness to defend itself and its allies against any threat. Understood, Admiral. We'll keep our eyes open out here. The screen went dark, and Santos turned to her mixed crew of humans and aliens. You heard the Admiral, she said. Unknown contacts approaching from the core. All ships in the sector are to maintain defensive readiness and report any unusual activity. Hexton nodded. Do you think this new fleet will be like the Hegemony? I don't know, Santos replied. But if they are, they're about to learn the same lesson the Hegemony did. Which is? Santos looked out at the stars, where human and alien ships worked together to build a better future. That humanity doesn't start fights, she said. But we finish them. Deep in the ice of Europa, 11 Titan-class vessels slept peacefully. Their reality-warping engines were cold and silent. Their weapons were powered down. They looked like monuments to a war that was already over. But they were ready. The galaxy had learned to respect humanity, not because humans were the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced, They had learned to respect humanity because humans were the species that could break the universe if they had to, but chose not to. It was a lesson that would echo through the stars for generations to come. There are some species you can conquer, some you can destroy, and some you should just leave alone. Humanity had proven they belonged in the third category, and everyone in the galaxy was better off for it.